Hello, my friends. If you go to the Twitter account of the Indian Prime Minister Modi, you'll see that under his latest tweets, there are an incredible number of insults and very harsh criticism from the British who are fed up. A piece of news hit like a bombshell today, an agreement between India and the United Kingdom, an absolutely astonishing agreement. No country, I'm not even talking about a sovereignist country, just a country with a minimum of sovereignty would sign such an agreement. It's a betrayal, and it's yet another betrayal, and now it's practically becoming a daily occurrence. When you live in this country, every time some news comes in, you say it's not possible. I must have misread, misunderstood, or misheard, and yet that's how it is. We're in unbelievable but true territory. So let me tell you the story. In recent months, and I've covered this a lot on this channel, there has been an increase, even an explosion in taxes in the United Kingdom. Taxes in the United Kingdom are quickly becoming unbearable because you experience what's called double whammy. Why? Because the state doesn't redistribute anything at all, so you're paying a lot of taxes, almost as if you were in a socialist state. But on the other hand, all the public services you pay for, you have to pay full price for them, as if you were in a capitalist jungle. So actually it gives you a double whammy. Just to give you an example, let's say you live 25 minutes, half an hour from London, and you need to go there for work, so you get a train pass. I don't know how much that costs in France. Tell me, for example, I don't know, Paris-Fontainebleau, how much does that cost? Well, the same distance as Paris to Fontainebleau here in the UK, you would be paying 78,000 euros per year, while your taxes fund the railways that have been sold to private companies. I mean, it's a completely absurd system. That's what makes taxes quickly unbearable. It makes the tax burden much harder to bear in the UK than in other countries. You're literally paying the taxes of a socialist state, while at the same time, public services are non-existent. So, as I was saying, one of the most terrible taxes that has hit the economy in recent months is the increase in the tax on labor. That means companies that provide jobs have to pay social contributions. What are they for? Nobody knows. There's not even unemployment insurance in this country. Well, there is one. No matter what your salary is, you get 6 months, you get about 400 euros per month for 6 months. Just so you know, it has nothing to do with your salary. It's not proportional to your income or anything like that. So, you could potentially be taxed on 50,000, 70,000, or even 100,000 euros. When you're unemployed, you get 6 months, 400 euros, paid out weekly, like in the Victorian era. As I was saying, it's a tax on labor that has made British labor so expensive that today, many companies are saying, we lay off, we relocate, or we freeze hiring. Because at this point, it's just not possible anymore. At this point, we can't work anymore. Okay, so that's the first knock-on effect. Remember, that's the first effect that made it so we can't hire in the United Kingdom. And that's one of the reasons why unemployment is rising. And then, of course, a lot of people end up in the economy. We're not talking about the innovation economy here. We're not talking about the AI economy or the tech economy or anything like that. We're more and more in the Deliveroo economy, in the zero-hour contract economy, in the gig economy, in precarious work, all of that. Okay, now that you understand the context, we're getting to the agreement. An agreement was made with India for, get this. So the agreement on paper is an economic agreement, okay? But when you read the text, it includes an immigration component. It will be possible for companies in the United Kingdom to bring in Indian workers and be exempted for 3 years from payroll taxes on Indian workers. That's the idea. So what does that mean? It means that we have a country with more than 60 million inhabitants, the United Kingdom, opening itself up to immigration from a country with over 1 billion inhabitants. By saying basically come over and bring them in for up to 3 years, no payroll taxes. So in reality, what will happen is that companies will prefer to bring people from India because they are cheaper to recruit than the British. They already cost less because there is downward pressure on salaries, that's clear. So the people who are brought from far away are always ready to come to the UK and accept a huge pay cut. So that's already the first layer. That's the classic layer that we know, which has always worked. But today, an incentive is being created for employers by telling them, you just have to bring people from India and for 3 years, don't pay any payroll taxes. So, to try to fool the enemy, they were told, you pay a sum, but it's a small sum, an amount equivalent to a few €100 at the time when they apply for their visa. They pay a small sum of a few €100 as a final settlement. So, in reality, we're not even talking about equality anymore because you know that we've created a system where there is equality before the law in this country. Today, there is inequality in taxation, inequality in the workplace, and always this inequality at the expense of the locals. It's absolutely unbelievable. I know a lot of countries where revolutions have broken out for much less than this. But here, well, as Margaret Thatcher used to say, we don't have a society. So people watch and then they'll complain, they'll go and yell at Modi on his X account and then it'll stop. So that's a bit of the voilà un petit news that is completely staggering today. And then we'll see where this ends up. But what the British politicians who agree with this are saying, they say, guys, stop complaining because we made a deal that is bilateral. Ça veut dire the British who would like to go work in India, they too, for 3 years, would not pay social security contributions in India. So I'll let you appreciate the humorous side of this statement, right? Or the cynical side if you prefer. How many people from the United Kingdom will go to work in India? Are they going to immigrate to India to work there? So it's true that today maybe someone will say yes, but today it doesn't make sense. But in a few years, maybe it might become appealing to immigrate to India for work if you live in the United Kingdom. You should know, in the United Kingdom, for example, the RSPCA, what do you call that in France? It's for animals. The association that takes care of animals has stated that they've seen a tremendous increase in people abandoning their pets. Because they can no longer afford to pay for food, can no longer afford to pay for the vet. So what do? They abandon them, they take them to the shelter. For now, they take them to the shelter. They don't eat them yet. All right? Just to give you an example, in 2008, when you look at the evolution of average salaries, for example, in the United Kingdom and the United States, in 2008, the United Kingdom we were 30 to 40% better paid than Americans. At the time when I went to the United States, I felt like I was arriving in a third world country. I would rent the Ford Mustang GT, get a 200 square meter suite and so on. It was really cheap. When you had the British pound and you were well paid, you arrived in the United States, honestly, it was a piece of cake. Today, Americans are paid on average 50% more than the British. British salaries have stagnated, while American salaries have literally skyrocketed. Today, a six-figure salary in the United States is something that practically everyone has. See what I mean? Meanwhile, we've stalled. To give another example, in the 1960s and 70s, when Singapore gained its independence, the average salary in Singapore was a quarter of that of the United Kingdom. It was 75% lower than that of the United Kingdom. Today, salaries in Singapore are almost double those in the UK. They have far surpassed British salaries. So we're really in a country that's stagnating because it's constantly being plundered over and over again with a population that's constantly suffering a double whammy. You're constantly being plundered from every side with no escape. So, there you go, my friends. In the last video I made, some people said, yeah, you're going to favor the Euro fanatics. I had criticized Brexit, saying it was a complete failure. Of course, you have to be honest because I can't just pack my bags, buy tickets easily, and leave this country while telling you that I'm applauding and that Brexit was a success. No, it wasn't a success at all. It's from that point that the country's collapse accelerated. But that's not a pro-EU statement. I'm still just as Eurosceptic as I've always been. And by the way, I hope today that the European Union collapses, because I believe, to be honest with you, I believe that it's only on that occasion that the peoples will be able to free themselves from it. It's a bit like the USSR. If you remember with the USSR, there wasn't a single country that left the USSR just like that, saying, we vote, we hold a referendum, we leave the USSR. No, it doesn't work like that. The day the USSR collapsed, well, that's it. The countries found themselves faced with a fait accompli. So one day the European Union will collapse, of course. The countries that haven't left will be hit head on. They'll have to manage on their own. And us too. But realistically, we're still in the European Union. We've just gone, if you will, from being a member of the European Union to being a vassal of the European Union. There's a status, there's the status of member, and there's the status of vassal. It's like, for example, Cuba back in the day. You know, Cuba was never part of the USSR, but it was a vassal country or a satellite country, as they used to say back then. Satellite was a bit more respectful than vassal, but you get what I mean. Always aligned, always submissive, always connected, always obeying, always following, and so on. But it doesn't have a seat at the table. So there you have it, my friends. That was just the summary of today's situation, which is quite astonishing. Anyway, I was very glad that Merz finally got in. You know, the German chancellor, the very belligerent chancellor, he is very belligerent toward Russia. For him, it's a third world war. Now, we don't wait. We go. We take our revenge. Stalingrad was a mistake. I looked at the maps, all that. I know what mistakes they made. We're coming back. We're sending the panzers. We're sending the guys. And this time, we're going to march all the way to Moscow. That's the kind of guy he is. Very pro, as I was saying, very pro-European Union. And actually, he almost didn't make it because they had a first vote. And he lost the first vote. He left, his family left and all that. He was angry. But after that, they said, okay, let's vote again. They voted again. This time he won. You see democracy as it is today. The result is already decided. You vote. If you get it, that's good. If you don't get it, you vote again, you vote again, you vote again, as they say in cookbooks, until you get the desired result. So there you go. You mix until the dough has this or that consistency. So consistency. So what you do with Merz is have them vote again until he gets through. And then once he gets through, what do? Of course, we stop holding revotes. Why am I happy that Merz got through? I told you he's pro-EU. I said he was pro-NATO. And at the same time, I'm telling you, I'm happy that he got through. Because today, I've changed my strategy. Today, I'm betting on things getting worse. Honestly, I think that's our only hope. A guy like him, a radical like him, will only speed things up. Today, the only thing that will free us from this bureaucracy that is on a civilizational level, let me remind you, my friends, let me remind you of something. Do you know that one of the major technological shifts happening in the world today is it's practically on the same level, I would say, as nuclear technology, for example? It's artificial intelligence. Europe is not part of it. It's between the United States on one side and China on the other. Europe missed this turning point. Yet, Europe is the region of the world where AI is the most regulated. They made regulations, they made laws, they paralyzed it. And that's it. In a discussion they don't even understand. That means they don't even have a seat at the table. They're not part of the conversation. But they keep adding laws, they keep adding stuff. That's what's happening. We'll feel it in 300 years. I'm objective. The damage we're causing today, we can't just decide one day that if we've gone astray, we can recover. No. The day we open our eyes, the day this system collapses, we'll be so far behind, that's it. We'll suffer, like how Africa lags behind Europe, for example. You can't just catch up because you want to. It takes time. So, as I was saying today, I was happy that he got through because people like that, honestly, you have to applaud them, you have to encourage them, you have to push them forward because that's exactly how they accelerate the collapse of the European Union. That's it, my friends. Thank you for listening to this video up to this point. Let me remind you about my book, Astrology. One of the reasons why Europe is also collapsing. Because many countries talk about astrology, but it's like talking about Santa Claus. But if there is a continent that believes in it, that really and seriously believes in it, it's Europe. Merci mes amis d'avoir regardé cette vidéo. And I'll see you in the next one. See you soon.